Have you ever wondered why your eyes are blue or why you have brown hair?
All due to a process called genetics. Genetics is defined as the study of heredity, and heredity is the passing of traits from parents to their offspring. Genetics is centered around the molecule DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, and DNA is what holds the genetic information of all organisms. In DNA molecules, there are codes used by cells that express genes. The gene is the basic unit of heredity, and the gene an offspring has is determined by the parents of an individual. A human has 2 copies of each gene, one from the mother and one from the father. For each gene, a human has either 2 different alleles or 2 of the same alleles. An allele is a different form of the same gene. Many years ago, in order to understand just how this genetic material is passed on, Gregor Mendel performed experiments that provided the foundation of our knowledge on genetic inheritance. He performed experiments on the different traits of a pea plant. One trait he chose to test was flower color. He started with a parental generation that consisted of purple and white flowers. The first generation then consisted of purple flowers, and the second generation consisted of 75% purple flowers and 25% white flowers. From these experiments, we learned that there are dominant alleles and recessive alleles. A dominant allele hides the trait of a recessive allele. To predict the allele combinations of dominant and recessive traits, we can use a Punnett square. A Punnett square is used to predict the probability of a genotype, and a genotype is the genetic makeup of an organism. We can use a Punnett square to explain the results of Gregor's experiment, but before we begin, it is important that you understand the terms homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous means that an organism has either 2 dominant or 2 recessive alleles, and heterozygous means an organism has 1 dominant and 1 recessive allele.
Gregor Mendel started his experiment with a homozygous purple flower, which we will label with 2 capital P's because purple is a dominant trait. He crossed this flower with a homozygous white flower, which we will label with 2 lowercase w's because white is the recessive trait. To complete the cross, we bring down the trait for the purple flower into each box. You then bring the trait for the white flower across into each box. This results in 100% heterozygous purple flowers, verifying that the first generation consisted of all purple flowers. Gregor Mendel then took the heterozygous flowers from the first generation and crossed them. This cross resulted in 25% homozygous purple flowers, 50% heterozygous purple flowers, and 25% homozygous white flowers. This verified that the second generation consisted of 75% purple flowers and 25% white flowers.
The traits of your parents were crossed in the same way that Gregor's plant's traits were crossed. This determined what traits you got. So the next time you wonder why you have blue eyes or brown hair, know it's due to a process called genetics.